Good evening, everyone. It's Doug Record here from Bourne Environmental Education Centre. It's National Science Week, and we've got a fantastic case study of a home battery photovoltaic system that David Howard of Tathra from Clean Energy for Eternity is going to talk to you about. I'd like to start proceedings by showing my respect and acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which this meeting, at least in my case, I don't know where you are, but I'm on Birrigarnj country in the Yuin Nation of the far south coast, and I acknowledge the elders past, present and emerging, and extend my respect to any Aboriginal persons present. And really a big theme of Science Week is knowledge that helps us, and modern scientific knowledge is one dimension there, but there's a lot of Indigenous wisdom that we need to tap into in order to achieve sustainability, and that's part of the theme for today. Now, I just point out to you that you have got access to chat. We chose to go with a webinar. They're a little easier to manage from this end, but you've got chat. You can send messages to us if you've got questions or things you want resolved. There's a Q&A button which you can put questions in, and we talked about this a little. Keep your questions, keep them going in Q&A, but we'll address them in a session at the end. We won't stop David halfway through his sentence and interrupt him. We'll let him go through his slide deck and give us his presentation, and then we'll go through those questions at the end. And also at the end, you can raise your hand at some point if you want to say something. I can give people access to the microphone at some point, which we'll do in that Q&A session. You're a little bit more constrained than in a Zoom meeting, but part of that is that we don't have to worry about people leaving their microphones open and hearing flushing toilets and dogs barking and all that sort of thing that can sometimes plague Zoom meetings. So we hope it works for you. Without any further ado, I will hand over to you, David, and you can share your screen and start your presentation.
Thanks, Doug. Can you see the screen there okay, everyone?
Thank you.
Okay, hello, everyone. My name's David Howard, and I'm a volunteer for Clean Energy for Eternity. I'm not an expert, but the nice thing is I'm someone who's started from nowhere and had to learn a lot about home solar and battery systems. And what I wanted to do tonight was to share what I found out and try and help anyone who's going through the same situation where they're trying to assess whether a home solar battery system is for them. Basically, I've got about 30 or 40 slides, which is a lot. It's usually designed for an hour-long presentation. But tonight I'm going to move through them fairly quickly. A lot of it's quite visual, and hopefully I'll take you through everything you need to know to make that assessment. I also apologise. It would have been great to have this at the pub for Science Week, Science in the Pub at the Tathra pub. It would have been good to have a few beers and perhaps have Matt Knott and team play a few tunes for us after it, but maybe next time. But I'll try and entertain you best I can. So before I start, I have to acknowledge a few things. I searched for really good, a load of good information. And one really good source was a New South Wales Government Home Solar Battery Guide, believe it or not. And I used a lot of the energy market operators and the Climate Council, and I got and Clean Energy for Eternity, and the contractors who did my work, who were Southern Cross Solar Renewables. So I just want to acknowledge those people before I start. The most important thing you're going to hear tonight is the first definition. If you understand that, you're halfway there to understanding solar and battery systems. And that's to understand the difference, to understand what a kilowatt is and a kilowatt hour. So basically a kilowatt is the power required for an appliance to work. So you might have a microwave that is 2.4 kilowatts, or a light globe that's 100 watts. And kilowatt hour is the energy used each hour for that appliance is operating. So a kilowatt hour is equal to 1,000 watts sustained over 1 hour. So think of it of 10 by 100 kilowatt light globes running for an hour. And so when you get your energy bill, it'll be in kilowatt hours. It'll say how many kilowatt hours your power's been, and they charge you on that. So basically, this is what I'm going to run you through tonight quite quickly. The aim, well, really, I'll talk about the aim, why I want to do this, set the scene, so power usage and cost, how you find out what sort of power you're using and what you're paying. The energy market trends are going to tell you about that and about our CO2 footprint. It's easy to measure, easier than you think. What are the best information sources? There's so much information out there, you don't know where to start. I'll show you how to communicate your needs through a communication brief, a work brief. Quotation, one of the most important parts. What should be in a quotation? And most importantly, the whole costing you want from your provider so you can make all the right decisions. Then the decision-making process, the cost-benefit analysis. I'm going to show you the full cost of benefit analysis, real data from my experience. Installation operation, I'm going to show you all the issues and photos, and it'll help make it so much easier to understand the parts of the system. Then I'm going to talk about the future. It's pointless buying a system if it's not future-proof in a lot of ways, and where we're going as a society in terms of renewable energy. And then I'm going to clump it all together. If you're falling asleep during this brief, I'm going to clump it all together in an executive summary, and it's going to be a critical analysis. You'll be able to see all the lessons learned all in one slide. And then we're going to have a Q&A session. So basically the aim, I come into this wondering, I was fed up with what was happening with the federal government in terms of emissions reduction and their response to climate change. But importantly, I wanted to go through the whole process, document what I learned about going to renewables and try and share the information. So it's really, this isn't so much about the climate stuff anymore because it's a given. There's a lot of benefits in this. And one of the big benefits I've written in there in red is low cost. So I want to share my user experience so that they can provide information so you can assess, install and run a home solar battery system. And I want to promote local information sharing and support between the community, Clean Energy for Eternity, industry and the Shire Council and individuals. So basically what I'm saying is we can think globally, but by acting locally, I think that's the way to go. Everyone can make an impact. So setting the scene, well, why invest in home solar battery systems in the first place? Well, for us, we wanted to cut our energy bills. That's a really important thing. We wanted to become more self-sufficient. We thought that the energy market was changing and we wanted to get out of the control of the big power companies. We wanted to access renewable energy and lower our CO2 emissions. We wanted to sell our excess electricity. So we wanted to become virtual power plant, and I'll explain what a virtual power plant is and what's happening right now and likely to happen in the future and how to make full advantage of it. We went through the TAFRA 2018 fires. Our house got singed. We lost 8 houses on our street and we went into blackout. Well, we've had a blackout since with our home solar battery system, and we didn't even know we had a blackout until we were told about it. So the battery provides a backup for you. Also because we like to use the best technology available, so preferred choice. And then I want to talk about the community benefits. There's benefits for the community, local jobs, lowering costs and so on, and it'll become really clear why it's a good choice. And the big one I've got in green there is it feels good. It's quite surprising. When I show you the figures of how much CO2 we take out of the atmosphere by swapping over to renewables, you'll be amazed. So setting the scene, what are the energy market trends? Power prices are still rather high because we're still in the, as it said in the down below, the network is still in transition. So power prices are still high. So there's a lot of benefit in going to renewables. The government incentives, So the small scale technology certificates that are available, they're ramping down and they're going to end in 2030. So the incentives are going away. The export tariffs, that's what, when you've got power and you sell it to the grid, you could have got 25 cents a kilowatt hour a year or so ago. Now you'd be struggling to get 8 cents. And I've just written this down. At the start of this month, the New South Wales Independent Pricing and Regulatory Tribunal put out a determination for 2021-2022, and that's for benchmark solar export feed-in tariffs. So virtually they're saying we're changing the pricing and it's going to be benchmarked down from 16 to 8 cents now to around 5 cents a kilowatt hour. So you're going to get very little money for the power you export in. So that's an interesting thing. So I'll explain why that's good to know. There's export limits on how much you can put into the grid. But the good news is renewables penetration is getting out there, and that will make prices come down eventually. But the power companies will want to recoup their costs. So that's why batteries are important. I'll explain why later. Renewables technology is quite mature now. Batteries, like the generation of battery I've got, is really good, really smart, really efficient. Same with the solar panels. The prices have come down, and so renewable prices are coming down. So looking to the right there, the recent past, well, the way power was generated in the past was the big coal generators. They'd send the power down the grid, all these transmission lines that have huge losses, and then it'd get to where the one-way flows to where the final destination where they'll be used. Where it's happening now, in the red there, the energy flow is in two directions, and the customer is the center of the energy flow. So we distribute, it's a distributed network. There's less losses in it. It's a lot smarter, and it's a lot less susceptible to breakdown. So setting the scene, if you look at the right there, that graph, the pie graph, where do we generally in New South Wales use our energy? Well, the biggest use, usually 40% or higher, is hot water. Hot water is the big gorilla when it comes to power and the cost of power. If you control your hot water costs, you're halfway home. When you get a renewable system, including particularly my Tesla battery, it comes with an app, and I can view at any moment of the day what power, when I switch something on, I can see what's happening in real time. So it means it changes my behavior, and it means I can calculate a lot of things and change a lot of things I do. So looking at power use, for us, we did all the maths, and we use over 7,500 kilowatt hours of power per year. That's a lot of power, but we're just a normal family, 4 or 5 bedroom home, and our bill was around 2,500 a year. And when you add that up over 5 years, that's about 12,000. Over 10 years, that's 24,000. Over 20 years, that's nearly 50,000. The reason why I say that is people say, you know, if they think long-term, they could understand that it would be a good investment to invest in renewables where the warranty is 20 to 30 years, pay themselves off and power your house into the future. It's very, very few pieces of equipment that pay for themselves. Looking at the pollution side, we were putting out over 6,500 kilograms of CO2 per year. And if you look at the 5, 10 and 20-year figures, it's astounding. Getting up to 20 years, 133,000 kilograms of CO2. So, you know, when you see the IPCC report, code red, you think, oh, there's nothing I can do, I'm really worried. Well, there is. If you look at these figures, if individuals make an effort, it's amazing what you can do. So what are the main information sources? Probably the best information source is actually out there, and believe it or not, it's from the New South Wales government, the New South Wales Home Solar Battery Guide. I won't read all that out, but basically just Google New South Wales Home Solar Battery Guide 2020, and up it'll pop, and it has everything. It has fact sheets in it. You can download the PDFs. It's got everything you need to know from start to finish, and how to pick an installer, what they need, what standards they need to meet and all that, and what are the Australian standards for warranties and so on. So I highly recommend that. The next best source is your installer himself, but you need to choose a trusted installer. So I won't read this all out, but basically the couple of key things is to remember the Clean Energy Council. The installer has to be accredited with them, and so does the solar retailer, and they need to be licensed. And so I won't read all that out, but the key point there is for everything you do, if you go through the Home Solar Battery Guide, it mentions this is from that, and the installer is important. If you aren't sure, talk to people, contact myself or people from Clean Energy for Eternity. We can point you in the people that we trust and to let you make your own decision. And they're locals and they have a lot of experience. The other good source of information, as I said, is Clean Energy for Eternity. Who are they? We're a local community, not-for-profit volunteer group promoting renewable energy since 2006. So basically, you might have heard the Imagine Community Solar Farm. We do that. We've put solar and batteries around a lot of the community buildings, such as the fire sheds. We're just about to do the Tafra, put solar and battery onto the Tafra Surf Club, and lots of other places. So we do bulk buys, we have recommended installers, and we're all volunteers, and there's no money for us. We just want to see people move to renewables. So importantly, before you go and get a quote, you need to know what you want. What do you want to achieve? Well, for us, our requirement was pretty simple. We wanted to lower our power bill to zero or into credit, and we wanted zero emissions if we could. We wanted the capability for future virtual power plants, and I'll explain what that is later. We wanted the ability to track all our generation and the serviceability of all our equipment near real time using an app. And we wanted a full cost of benefit analysis. And we use the New South Wales Home Battery Guide, Solar Battery Guide, to point us in that direction. What did we need to take to the installer? Well, apart from those questions, we needed a couple of power bills for the last 2 years. And a lot of companies like Actu AGL can give you a file of that information. We wanted a summary of our power uses and appliances. What do we use a day? What sort of systems we've got, and photos of the power meter, including the meter number. So that and there's a lot of good reasons for that, and I'll explain that later. So the quotation. This is a real quotation. I got permission to share this with you. Don't worry about all the huge amount of information in it. I'll tell you the key points. We bought 29 Tindo solar panels, and those solar panels are Australian made. We bought 29 microinverters. Microinverters are the little boxes that sit under the panels that are controllers for the panels. That means that I can see every one of those panels, how they're operating, shut them off, and do maintenance on them, make sure they're all working one time. That's new technology. You never used to be able to do that. And in an emergency, they can be switched off remotely. Also, there's a lot of engineering and racking stuff, and you might notice the installation, all the standards they're going to meet when they install there. And down a bit further down, the battery, a Tesla Powerwall 2 Gateway 2. The battery is a 14 kilowatt hour battery. I'll explain more about that later. And a gateway, which is the smarts of it, controls where the power goes, and it's all real time. You don't have to worry about it. It does it all for you. So the big thing you're most interested in now is what is the total cost? This is a big system. It's a 10 kilowatt system with a 14 kilowatt hour battery. It's $34,000 after discounts and so on, and the government gives you a small scale technology certificate for solar panels. Remember I said that certificate is going to disappear in 2030, and it's downscaling right now. A good reason to get in and get solar panels now, because we saved 14% off the cost, nearly $5,000, and it brought down the cost to $28,500. Now, when we saw that cost, we thought, wow, that's a lot of money. You know, we're retirees. Is it worth the investment? I'll explain later why it is. And when I'm talking, think of the price of a car, and whether a car pays itself off after 6 or 7 years, and whether it keeps going for 30 years, saving you money the whole time, or even making you money. compare it to what I'm going to show you in a moment. So let's have a look at what this is. Basically what happened was the solar generation estimates were done. So in the quote, he's going to work his way through, and here's the pictures. It shows where the panels are going to be. That's our house, and where north is, 29 panels, and they're going to be set out into 3 arrays, the north array, the middle array, and the west array. And you can see all the panels, and that's just showing an app showing how much watts is being generated at that particular time of the day. So there's the panels and everything that goes with the panels, and then the battery. It's a Tesla battery. Why I've got this slide up, the most important thing is peak power and continuous power. Why it's important, continuous power 5 kilowatts. Basically, when you turn on an appliance, the hot water system and the oven and all that, generally you get up around 5 kilowatts. So it's good that you have a system that can push out 5 kilowatts constantly. You can get cheaper batteries that will give you less, and they don't give you everything you need. And next thing you know, you're taking power from the grid and paying for it when you don't really need to. The other thing, these batteries are scalable. If I wanted to, I could buy 10 of them, daisy chain them together to make me a huge system. But I'm not saying we'd do that, but they're very smart. So how does this all work? Well, when you've got a smart battery management system, it works like this. On the left-hand side there, you generate solar power, and it prioritizes what it does with the power. The first power that comes from the sun goes into your house and is used by your appliances. So you generate and use it, you self-consume is what we call it. Then anything above that self-consumption goes into the battery. So if you've got extra power, it goes into the battery and charges the battery up because it kept you going overnight. And then anything above that, if you're generating a little bit more, goes into the grid and you get paid for it. So that's all done, and you don't even realize it's happening. Then on the other side, when you use energy, on the right-hand side here, the appliances, the solar buffer prioritizes where it comes from. So for example, if you turn on an appliance, it comes from the solar during the day in the first place, or if it's at night or when it's cloudy or raining or whatever, and there's not much solar being generated, it'll come from the battery. Or if the battery is empty, it'll come from the grid. So this is typically what the applications look like on your phone. And my app looks like that. I'm going to show you some real data. And basically, I run the solar. I can run it anywhere in the world and can see what it's happening and change things. And I can connect my car when we're going to pay off the solar from the money, our savings, our credits. We're going to save and buy an electric vehicle, an SUV, and use this same app, hopefully. So there's a lot of information here, but where I've circled is the most important bit, and the bar graph below. Basically, when you get a quotation, the solar generation estimates are done. So what they do is they look at your location, your orientation of your home, the shade around your home, and the localized solar irradiance and weather over the last 30 years. And they look at your panel size and the number of panels and how much panel and power and efficiency of the panels, and how they would set up the solar array to give you the best bang for the buck. And the best bang we would get for our buck was the energy output of 13,500 kilowatt hours a year. That's a lot of power it can generate, very powerful. And how much greenhouse gas emissions reduction? Nearly 11,500 kilograms per year. But the most important thing was the electricity savings, if I utilise this really well. They said I could save about 4,000 a year. What they're talking about there was save my power bill, and then above that was what I put back into the grid and got credit for. If you look down below, you can see the bar graph, and for different times of the year, you can see in January and the summer months, we're nearly getting 50 kilowatt hours a day out of the sun. That's a lot of power. Most houses, you only need about 20 kilowatt hours a day over the 24-hour period to run your home. And you see in winter, the low period's about on an average of 20, 21 kilowatt hours during the day. This looks a busy slide, so don't worry. Just look to the left-hand side where it says solar generation. All they're showing here is what they estimated they could generate in solar and what the load estimates would be, i.e. based on my past power bill, what I would use power-wise during the day and what I would use in the evening, and then the export is what I'd have left over, the power left over to sell back to the grid. And that's how they come at the bottom figures. The most important thing in there is red, is what they recommend to get the best bang for your buck is self-consumption. So that means use the power during the day, power your home during the day from the sun, power your home during the night from the battery, which is generated from the sun during the day, and then take any extra stuff and export it back and make a few dollars. And they're saying the big figure you would get would be about $3,400 a year. So you'd pay off your $2,500 bill per annum, you'd replace that because you'd be self-consuming, and the rest you'd sell back to the grid. And this is just showing the payback period. I won't dwell on it, but it's virtually saying the payback period by self-consuming and exporting the rest would be a 7-year payoff period. That's amazing. And it's, to tell you, it's a 7% return on investment. So warranties, the solar panels, the Australian standards are 25 years. The inverter that turns the AC, the DC into AC, and to make it safer to handle, they're 10 years. The racking and framing systems, I'll show you photos of them, 15 years. The installation, you should have a 5-year warranty, and the battery is 10 years unlimited warranties, unlimited cycles. And people say to me, oh, well, why would I get a battery? It's only going to last 10 years. Well, no, that's the warranty period. A battery will last a lot longer than that, probably 20 years or more. So the point is, these things work really hard, will last 20, 30 years at least. So you'll see why they're a good investment. So here's the cost benefit analysis. You've been given all that information, and your wife and yourself sit down and say, well, is it worth paying $28,000, say? And for us, we did the math. Now, remember I said, how much would you pay in 10, 20 years? It's well worth it. It's a really good investment. You can see the solution there, a 10 kilowatt solar system with a 14 kilowatt hour battery. 14 kilowatt hour is a larger battery, the Tesla one, because it allows you to, a lot of the other batteries are smaller, it allows you to keep the house powered for at least a day. And the near real-time app is just superb. You'll see photos of it in a moment. It gives us 24/7 power with outage backup. Energy output is huge for the year. Emissions reduction, like I said, is huge. Electricity savings, nearly $3,500. Monitoring is timely and accurate, and that power helps you make decisions on the spot. The investment was $28,500, and it's self-funded. So basically, by bill comparison, we went in with a bill that was $2,400, and we came out after the install with a $1,000 credit. So we've just been through a year, and we're getting up near that credit. Even with the exports going down, that credit will go down a little bit, but we're not paying bills. That's the main thing. We're saving money every year. So the payoff and return on investment, I dare anyone to go to a bank or anywhere and see if they can get this investment. A 7% return on investment, and your system pays itself off in 7 or 8 years, and it continues for its life to give you that 7% return. Unbelievable. The other thing is, people talk about maintenance. There's very little maintenance on it, and it's self-sustaining. What do I mean by that? We're quite strong about this. We save this, put the savings aside. We allocate every month or every quarter what we would have paid to a power bill into account, and we pay ourselves back. And that money we pay ourselves back and the credits go into what we call an online savings account. And then that will either upgrade the system in the future, or it'll buy as an electric vehicle, or to be a deposit on an electric vehicle. Self-sustaining. Here's all the pictures, the installation, our house pointing north. These are the racks going up. That's the westerly side. You can see the racking system going on there. They're the inverters, the micro inverters going on and the wiring. These are two of the free solar arrays. At the top of the screen is the westerly array. At the bottom of the screen is the sloping northerly array, and there's another one in front of that is a bit flatter for the higher sun. Why do we have so many different arrays? It means that we get an even flow of power over the day. Here's the battery, what it looks like. That's the battery in the box when it arrived. You'll see another battery there. Someone else who's in Tafra was getting a battery as well. These things are popping up everywhere. Below is the Tesla battery in our garage. They're a really good looking thing. They put a firewall behind it for safety, and I just painted it up and it looks really snazzy. And that's what the controller above, everything is run from there and connects to your Wi-Fi network and your phone. And you can control it anywhere in the world or view what's happening anywhere in the world, the gateway. And this is in the fernery in our power box. They did a lot of cabling in the wall, and the two little boxes above just that connect up to the micro inverters, and that's it. And they did such a good job, they didn't even break a leaf on the plants. Here's the Tesla battery application. This is the home screen on the left. You can see that the battery is 100% charged, and you can look at the power flow, the performance, and the backup history. Just talking about backup, I'll explain that later. On the right there, you can see the power flow. It shows you which way the power's moving real time. So that's a screen snap, but in real time, those little dots move and show you where the power is moving. So there you can see there's 6.8 kilowatts being generated, 0.7 or 700 watts is going to the home, 5 kilowatts is going to the battery. So it's been in the morning, 10:17 a.m., charging the battery up, and there was a bit of power over, and I was putting 1.1 kilowatts to the grid. You can press on any one to look at it one at a time. So the solar energy there for the day, 72 kilowatt hours I generated. That was a huge day. You can see how it goes up in the morning, and you can see there on the right-hand side, you can see where the energy goes to and where the percentages are. And all this stuff you can download for a day, a week, a month, a year, or a lifetime. And all at the press of a button. They're all graphical, and they give you the stats as well. So that's what it looks like, showing the power usage in the blue, the sun in the yellow, the battery, either to or from the battery in the green, and the grid, to and from the grid. You'll notice no power on the left was taken from the grid. It was all given to the grid after the battery was charged up. So it gives you power at your fingertips, knowledge. Performance, it shows you how much you're self-powered. We are 100% self-powered. Why it doesn't show 100% is that I connect to the battery, or it connects to the grid and from the grid to keep a handshake to make the grid realise we're still connected. So we give them 4% of power over a 24-hour period. The battery backup, you'll see there on May the 22nd, 17-minute outage. That's an example. A possum got on a power line. It got electrocuted. It sent our street into blackout, but we didn't know it. And the application sent me a message and said, hey, you're in blackout, but you're okay. We're looking after you. On other times, we've noticed that the grid has put out bad frequencies and bad voltages, and we've gone into blackout, so into backup, to protect our home from spikes. These are just other views from the inverters. I won't worry about them. We've got to push on. This is, I get an email once a month from my application showing me how much power I've generated and how many kgs of carbon I've offset. So in this month, 882 kilograms of CO2 we offset, or 22 trees equivalent. So just the last few slides. The future, well, home electric vehicle charge stations. I've got a friend, this is his Tesla vehicle. It means you'll be able to charge your vehicle at no cost. It means no CO2 emissions. And an important thing, I've got virtual power plant potential. What I'm saying there is that because you generate power, and in the future, you'll be able to charge your car up, your car will have a a battery capacity of between 75 and 100 kilowatt hours. So that's about 6 times the size of your home battery. So that means you could last for a week, power your house for a week with your car. And what I'm saying there is, the way things are going now is that the price they pay, they've changed the pricing down to about 5 cents for export. But during peak periods when there is no sun shining, or power costs go up, but you'll be able to export from your car or from your battery to the grid and make a fair bit of money. So that's what virtual power plants are about, and it's about sharing with your community. So there's a lot I could tell you on that, but that's for another time. So just to wrap up now, the executive summary, just checking the timing. The key thing, I think, based on our own location and current market needs and experience, everyone will be different, but become informed. The New South Wales Government Solar Battery Guide is really good. If you're unsure, feel free to give me a ring or an email, and I'm happy to help out or refer you. Request comprehensive quote from licensed and accredited installers. Conduct a cost-benefit analysis. A lot of the installers, particularly the one I used, was fabulous. He did pretty well a full cost-to-benefit analysis for me from all the information available. But most important, priority one, trusted installer and equipment. Check their qualifications and specifications and cross-check. The other thing, through Clean Energy for Eternity, we can share other providers. If we had been meeting at the pub tonight, I had half a dozen other people who had it installed up there to answer questions with me. Bigger is better. Most people say, oh, I put 5 kilowatts on, and they say, if I had it over again, I would have done 10 or more. Bigger is better. You've got to plan for winter so that to meet the minimum requirements, so that you've always got enough power there. And smarter is better. Anyone can buy a battery, but to buy a good smart battery with the throughput you need, that is really important. And the app is really, really important. Self-consumption is the way to go now. And that's the reason why batteries in the past probably weren't, a lot of people were saying it wasn't the time to buy them, too expensive. Let me tell you, now is the time. Batteries, get on board while you can. And the big power providers want to make money out of you. Take that away from them by getting a battery and solar system. Make money out of them. Finally, the last couple of things, review your power provider for tariffs. Things occasionally go wrong. Make sure you've got warranty and all that, and you have local support. It's a good investment, I believe. So in my opinion, to wrap up, smart batteries coupled with solar PV is a game changer.
David,
you, Dave.
Fantastic. There was so much good information in that presentation that I'm sure our participants really enjoyed. I know a lot of people are on the cusp of making decisions like you've gone through, and so it's really good to have local people that have got your experience, and your willingness to share that information and have people contact you is wonderful. ABC News recently, there was a story, you know, the media, you get negative stories. So it was a story about people that were wanting to get their panels taken off their roof because they had a negative experience. I mean, the reality in every industry is you can buy a lemon. And I think the lesson from today is that in the community we live in, there are people with the expertise and the knowledge, and anyone that comes into our community and installs substandard work will soon be exposed. And to protect ourselves, we should talk to people like you. I know that we had our system installed. We haven't got a battery at this point, but we were part of that group of people that signed up with Lakeside Electrical. We were completely happy with the installation, and it's all working well, no problems whatsoever. So look, I've got a couple of questions here. Ian, I don't know if you've got access to a microphone there, but I've unmuted you. You've shown yourself to be a trustworthy person in there. Do you want to?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Do you want to ask directly your question there to David?
Yeah, look, David, I'm interested in what your feelings are about how things are going in the future with the benefits and disadvantages of staying connected to the grid, and whether in fact you can actually disconnect from the grid, whether one is allowed to, because it seems from what I'm hearing that there will soon be significant disincentives for staying on the grid. They're talking about having some kind of penalty system for
That's right.
for people who feed in. Obviously, at the moment, on the figures you've shown us, you're getting $1,000 plus a year from being connected to the grid. But what's your thinking? Have you looked into disconnecting totally?
Yeah, totally. That's a really good question, and it's on my mind all the time. I'm linked into the national energy market, and I'm very lucky. I've been allowed in with the engineers, and I just keep my mouth shut and listen and learn. So basically, the Independent Pricing and Regulatory Tribunal, as you know, are dropping tariffs, and they're trying to convince people. I think they're doing it the wrong way. I would use a carrot rather than a stick. A carrot would be an incentive for people to get batteries, because the more batteries out there in a distributed network, it means as a community, we can give cheap energy to each other and keep the power local. And in the event of fires and stuff like that, we're going to be a lot more resilient. And so there's two approaches. One is to daisy chain a few batteries, or have a bigger battery and a bigger solar system and go off the grid, which is a good strategy. There's nothing wrong with that at all. And just by not paying power bills means you're paying yourself off, if you know what I mean. Yeah. You have to be good in making those savings and putting the money aside, but yes, on paper it works. Or the other way is that you recognise, like I have, that the government, the federal government in particular, I'm just going to try not to be too political, but they're effing hopeless. And the state government's doing pretty well. Matt Keane and his people, I think they're doing pretty well. But still, because things are moving so slow, and because you've got power has been privatised, people want to make a dollar, and they have people who they have investors, so they want a return in their investment. So my point of view is get as many panels as you can, get a biggest battery as you can, and eventually transition to an electric vehicle and connect that battery where you can get a two-way flow. Yeah. So where you can take from the sun during the day, charge your home battery and your car up, and then sell power back in the evening from your at the peak periods at a higher rate, and beat them at their own game. So that's what I'm suggesting. So
and go off grid.
Yeah, and so either go off grid or stay on grid and make a bit of money from their own game.
Yeah, my point. Do you know, are you actually allowed to disconnect from the grid? Can you get the power companies to disconnect?
Yes.
Home in Tathra?
You know that picture I had of the truck with the two batteries?
Mm-hmm.
There's someone in Tathra that's connected. I can't give names, but I know someone who's, I don't know what you have to go through to do it, but I do know of people who have disconnected from the grid.
Right, okay, because there's, as you point out, there's exciting things happening with electric vehicles. Just recently, I think it was the F100 or the Ford trucks in the States, the Ford F-150 Lightning or something, which can actually has enough battery power to be a battery for 2 days worth of household use.
Oh, easily. And the other thing I tell people, we need to make a transitional change, and that transitional change was in the early days of panels, we got really good export payments from them. We need to get over that and realise as more solar panels get out there, solar power is getting cheaper. It's gone from 40 megawatt hours. It's gone from over $100 a megawatt hour to $40 a megawatt hour over 10 years. That's nearly a 90% change. And it's coming down further. So the price of power is going to get less and less and less. So you can't expect to get a good export. So the secret is to be self-sufficient and just get rid of having costs at all. Don't get wrapped around the axle with export. As long as all I want is to power my home and generate enough power, give it back to the grid to pay the connection fee, and that'll do me. Everything above that's icing on the cake.
Now, you said sorry, Doug, tell me if I'm asking too many questions, because you also mentioned...
Not at all. You're doing a great job, Ian. Okay. Keep it up.
No worries. David said you were going to talk about virtual power networks, or which the concept of people sharing with a they're trading between themselves, but I don't think you've actually talked about that yet.
I can give an example if you like.
I understand the concept, but I don't know how many other people are listening that.
I know what's actually happening right now in South Australia, for example. South Australia, I haven't got the notes now, I'll just do it off my head. But South Australia, in cooperation with Tesla and the Australian Energy Market Operator and a lot of other people, had something like, I think it was 2,400 homes. And a good part of half of those homes, 1,200, for example, were housing commission homes. And they said to those tenants of the housing commission homes, how about if we put solar panels on your community accommodation? Can we have your permission to do that? And to put a community battery there. And what at no cost to you. And by the way, we'll lower your power bill by say 30%, 40%, right? And also, they signed up people like me who had a solar and battery system from the area, another few thousand people, and made all the software work so that they shared power and shared it back to the grid. So any excess power was a little bit was taken out of every battery during the peak period to keep the grid stable in terms of voltage and frequency. And that, that solves the problem of the grid becoming unstable because of peaks during the day when the sun's up and then running out of power in the evening, if you know what I mean. And that works really well, and it works so well that they added another 1,200 homes into the trial. So that's getting close to ending, and it's proving that that's an example of virtual power plants.
Great.
Now, David, not that I'm, these questions are great and it's going well, but we did mention to people that there would be a slight mention of electric vehicles, and there was a picture of one in your presentation. And do you want to say something about V to G or vehicle to grid, vehicle to your home type systems?
Yeah. I'm in the early stages of researching this, and I know I think in America and Europe, they're getting to the stage of starting to use them as well. So the big thing to think, the big batteries that they're building in Victoria and South Australia and all around Australia now, like I think there's something, huge amount of battery going in. Think of a car as a big battery for a home in some respects. 75 to 100 kilowatt hours. Like, my battery's 14 at home, my home battery.
Well, so just to point out for our Kona there in the picture parked in Carp Street there, that's a 60 kilowatt battery, which gives us a range of over 400 kilometres. But for Eileen and I in the house, that's probably about a week's, a bit less than a week's electricity that we would use.
Yeah.
And the other factor with this is that you've got all these people driving around in electric vehicles with these big batteries, and in a city setting in particular, they'd be driving to a location which has got a lot of solar potential, a workplace with, or a shopping centre, which can generate electricity. So you can, in your daily, just by being at work and having your car parked, if there's charging facilities, you can charge up your car and then come home and use it to operate your appliances. So that again adds to your potential, Ian, to be off the grid if you've got the capacity to have a massive battery like that at your disposal. And look, just our experience, the Hyundai Kona we've had since June 30th last year, and we bought it in response to our internal combustion engine vehicle being destroyed in a hailstorm in Canberra at the beginning of the year. And we thought, oh, well, look, the time is right for us to change. And look, the hard reality is that we've bought a car. There's a whole range of incentives coming into support people in terms of relief from stamp duty and luxury tax and all the rest of it. But we probably paid double what the Kona, the equivalent petrol or diesel Kona is, but we've got zero tailpipe emissions, and that's what we wanted to achieve. And with 33,000 kilometres in the first year, we've saved something like 5 to 6 tonnes of carbon equivalent emissions. just for, that one household. So that's worth it as far as we're concerned. We've got to cut emissions hard. We've got to go hard and go early. We obviously haven't gone early enough, but we really do have to drastically reduce emissions. And for a household, your transport is a significant part of your carbon budget. And if you can slash that, that's a good thing. And the vehicle parked in front is my electric trike, which in a little over a year, I've done nearly 4,000 kilometres in. And look, it's a joy to ride. It's good for your fitness. And I think also, especially in urban settings, people have got to access lightweight transport like e-bikes. I think they're going to come into their own in future years, and all those things can be charged off your home PV system. So in David's case, he's got a much bigger, system is double what I've got at home. But when the sun's shining, we can plug the car in. We're putting that energy into the car and saving. I'm estimating the first year we've saved about $2,500 on fuel costs, and that's each year that's going to happen. Andrea, their household has dramatically reduced your emissions. What was your estimated saving? You were saying about 6 tonnes?
I've just got it here. It's a huge amount.
Yeah.
Where are we? It's nearly 7,000. Nearly 7 tonnes. 7,000 kilograms.
Yeah.
Of CO2 a year, and like so that's and then if we get an electric vehicle, the amount that'll be huge, and then with COVID, we've made a lot of changes. We've decided not to travel as much, as in we buy all our produce in Tafra, all local. It's amazing the changes, and so one household can make. Yeah, I highly recommend people if they can.
I think people are kind of oblivious to that whole tailpipe emissions equation, that your average car produces 200 grams of carbon dioxide equivalent per kilometre. So, you make a trip of 1,000 kilometres, you've got 200 kilos of carbon dioxide going out into the atmosphere. And for those people that remember their chemistry from high school, 44 grams of carbon dioxide at standard temperature and pressure occupies over 20 litres. That's just 44 grams occupies over 20 litres of volume. So every car in the world, and there are billions of them, is pumping out litres and litres of carbon dioxide gas. It's not a complicated thing to understand that we just have to cut that emissions down, and the science is telling us that, and the science is also enabling through this technology that David has outlined that we've got very clear ways of doing it. Now, David, I know Prue joined us from Clean Energy for Eternity, and Matthew sends his apologies. Matthew Knott sends his apologies. I did, Prue, I don't want to put any pressure on you because I didn't ask you to, but did you want to make any comment from a Clean Energy for Eternity point of view?
Well, thank you, Doug. It's wonderful to have this opportunity to speak to everyone. My burning question, Doug, is I do not have an electric vehicle simply because I can't afford one. So what is your prediction? What's the group's prediction of cost of electric vehicles to someone like me in the Bega Valley?
Do you want to answer that, David?
Yeah, good question, Prue. I think the first thing is leadership. When I say leadership, we treat electric vehicles like they're luxury vehicles, and they shouldn't. And so there's good and bads. The bad thing is the federal government's really doing nothing much on them. But I think there's a lot of pressure coming to bear since the US presidency's changed, and now Europeans and UK government are really pushing to get rid of ICEs, internal combustion engines, by 2025 in some areas, and 2030 at the latest. So we don't see the range of electric vehicles and the lower range ones, the lower cost ones. So I think once, like solar panels, once electric vehicles get out there, the costs will really start coming down. And once they get them into Australia and we have second-hand electric vehicles, they will help all sorts of people to transition. And then as people become more, as we become more renewable on our electricity network, homes or prices come down, it will add more advantage to getting an electric vehicle, because to refuel them, i.e. to charge them up, will cost next to nothing. And because the running cost for an ICE engine, you've got to pay for the fuel, you've got spare parts, you've got maintenance every 10,000 kilometres. So I think like solar panels, they'll come down, but frustratingly at the moment, the Australian government's not doing enough.
Now, Ian, you had a point you wanted to make there?
Yeah, look, I just wanted to relate my experience recently. We've just building a new place in Merimbula. We're moving from being in a beautiful rural setting to a town setting, partly so that we can walk everywhere and save, reduce our emissions that way. But we did get a 6.5 kilowatt array is part of the build. And in talking with the installer, who was the installer you were referring to earlier, Doug, at Pambula, they suggested in lieu of a battery at this stage, which we couldn't afford straight up, that we get something called a catch power box, which actually directs during the daytime all your energy that you're generating to a good old bog standard hot water service. Their argument was, and I'll be interested in David's take on this, that as you pointed out, David, in your thing, about 40% of our usage is hot water. And in fact, storing energy as hot water is similar to having a battery. So,
exactly, yeah.
So their take was, if you can't afford a battery yet, consider getting one of these little boxes, which is about $700, which then diverts during your energy. It's like your smart thing where it chooses where it's going to send its power. So it sends its power first, or your power that you're generating with your solar panels, to this hot water service. When I say bog standard, it's the old, just standard 350 litre, or albeit new one, electric thing that we had 30 years ago, that kind of style. What do you think about that as a concept, as a starting point for people who may not be able to come up with $28,000 straight up?
Yeah, look, I probably should have said, I don't want to scare people with the $28,000. You could get an 8 kilowatt or a 7 or something like that, and it will still do a really good job. The interesting thing is, if you had asked me 2 years ago, and if you had read the New South Wales Home Solar Battery Guide 2 years ago, they wouldn't have recommended batteries just yet. But now with the export prices coming down, they are recommending. So yeah, it is scary, the cost, but another way to think of it is interest rates are really, really low, or even reverse mortgage would be worth it because the interest rates are so low. So I tend to think I would go for the bigger system if I could, because most people have the regret of not doing that. But having said that, if you definitely can't do it, I can understand. So I know what we did. We originally, when we switched over, I didn't realise this, but most people have off-peak. So the hot water's heated up at night when the rate's cheaper and not much power is being used. So when you put a solar panels and the battery on, that is what they call behind the meter. So in other words, that's separate to the line out for an off-peak hot water at a certain low pricing is different. So we disconnected off-peak and allowed our solar system and battery system to heat our hot water. And typically our hot water, we've got a really big one, and it heats up every, say, 4 hours. So roughly 4 times, 5 at the most, over a 24-hour cycle. But hot water is an issue in itself. There's lots of different ways you can go to heat pumps and stuff like that, and what you suggested. I haven't used what you've suggested, so I can't comment on that. I'm sorry.
Now, look, it's a fantastic discussion, and we have reached the hour mark, and I've got to, this is all recorded, so I've got to process all that. So David, look, on behalf of the Sapphire Coast Regional Science Hub Sustainability Education Network, who have been organising, with the Atlas of Life and other organisations, these webinars for people, I just wanted to say thank you very much to you and Clean Energy for Eternity for the pioneering work that you have done in leading us, down this path. It's a great path towards a democratisation of energy. I mean, it's a little bit like people have got the technology to essentially develop a machine that prints money, and governments don't like that sort of thing. Corporations don't like that sort of thing, and they're very enthusiastic about coming up with different ways of charging you now for doing it, but if we can work on those things that you're building up about getting people to be able to exchange energy, or, I mean, the whole Bitcoin phenomenon is based on energy essentially. And if people can take control of energy production, it's a huge change. And Prue, I take on board your comment about the capital costs of, which is just out of reach for some people, but they will get cheaper. New South Wales government introduced, a range of measures to be introduced in terms of electric vehicles, which will make them cheaper. There's a whole range of things happening internationally with what's essentially carbon tariffs on Australian products. The leadership in Australia, and at this point I will say that the Science Festival is proudly sponsored by the Australian government and through Inspiring Australia New South Wales, and their support is very valuable. But there is a problem with leadership around energy in this country, and it's very obvious when you talk about climate change in places I've been to, like South America and Nepal, where people are a little bit astonished about the lack of consensus about climate change. There's a really strange situation politically and media-wise in this country, which is really holding us back. And the people that have got big mountain ranges with glaciers retreating every year and diminishing prospects of harvesting fresh water, it's right in their face. It's right in everyone's faces, but we've really got to make some changes. But thank you to the participants for being there. I hope you had some useful information. You'll get a follow-up email, and David, you're happy for me to include your email in that email to people?
And definitely. Also, I want to put in a plug. Tomorrow at 8:30 on ABC Southeast Radio, Paul West from River Cottage, Australia, who's a fantastic guy, is rung up and is going to interview me. So if you want to find out a bit more, tune in tomorrow.
But thank you very much to everyone that's organised it. I must say it's been fantastic.
All right, well, thank you. Well, I'll sign off. It always feels rude. I've got this end button here, and it's like you're just pulling the plug. It's like turning off the lights and putting the chairs up in a restaurant. So thanks very much for coming. If you want to check out the video or refer that to people that you think might be interested in catching up, or, get David's contact details and take it on from there. So thanks very much, and enjoy the rest of Science Week.